Good morning and welcome to the Daily Light Devotion. I hope all of you have had a wonderful Monday and looking forward to today, that is the 17th of February. Today we are going to be seeing Jesus from Leviticus chapter 24 and 25 in the Old Testament. And the New Testament, we're going to look at Mark chapter 1. We'll continue, we looked at 1 to 22 yesterday, and today we're going to look at 23 to 45. Right, and in the theme for the Old Testament is God's sustaining presence, justice, freedom through redemption. So these two verses 24 and 25 in Leviticus shows us God sustains his people daily and restores them completely. So this chapter answers two important questions. How does God remain present with his people? And how does God bring justice, rest, and freedom? And through the light, bread, justice, and rest, redemption, we can see Jesus as our sustainer, light, and redeemer. So chapter 24, verses 1 to 9, God commands the lampstand must burn continually. The bread of the presence must be set regularly. This shows constant provision and unbroken fellowship, right? This shows that God's presence is not occasional, it is an ongoing and faithful. So Jesus is both the light and the bread, right? I am the light of the world, John 8:12, and John 6:35, he says, I am the bread of life. So Jesus sustains us daily, spiritually, eternally, and he builds our relationship with God is through him, right? And verses 10 to 23 of chapter 24, the passage emphasizes respect of God's name, accountability for wrongdoing, equal justice for all. So God shows that holiness is not only about worship, but about how people treat one another, right? And Jesus fulfills God's justice with mercy and truth. Psalms 85:10 says, justice and mercy have set. So Jesus satisfies God's justice while offering forgiveness. Moving over to Leviticus chapter 25, verses 1 to 7, God commands the land to rest every seventh year. This teaches trust. The people must rely on God. No constant work, not endless striving. And Jesus offers the rest beyond physical labor. Come to me, I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. Rest is an act of faith, not laziness. Right. Verses 8 to 17. Every 50 years, were freed, debts were cancelled, and land was restored. It was known as Jubilee, is about reset, restoration, and freedom. Right. And Jesus announces the ultimate Jubilee. He has sent me to proclaim the freedom for the captives. Luke chapter 4, verse 18. Jesus restores what sin has taken away. Right. Leviticus chapter 25, verses 23 to 28. God declares the land is mine, the people are stewards, not owners, and redemption is always possible. Right. Jesus is our Redeemer. In him we have redemption. Ephesians 1:7. What is lost can be redeemed through Christ. So the pattern we see here is presence, justice, and rest and redemption. Right. The pattern leads us to Jesus is our light and bread. He fulfills justice. He gives true rest, and he brings late lasting freedom. So the key takeaways is God sustains his people daily. God cares deeply about justice. Rest is a command, not optional, and redemption is always available. And Jesus fulfills God's plan completely. Moving over to the New Testament, Mark chapter 1, verses 23 to 45, we see the theme of authority over evil, compassion for the broken, and the cost of obedience. So these verses, Mark quickly moves from teaching to action. Jesus' authority is no longer only heard; it is seen now. Right. In these passages we see confront evil, heal the sick, restore the outcast, and all through this, his compassion is matched with his divine authority. Right. Jesus encounters a man with an unclean spirit in the synagogue. The spirit recognizes Jesus immediately. Jesus does not argue, he commands, the spirit obeys, and the people are amazed. Right. Jesus has authority over spiritual realm. Even the unclean spirit obeys him. Mark chapter 1, verses 27. Darkness recognizes Jesus before people do. Right. And verses 29 to 31, Jesus enters Simon's house. Simon's mother-in-law is sick with a fever. Jesus takes her up by the hand. She is healed immediately, and Jesus begins to serve. So Jesus cares about personal and also ordinary suffering. He lifted her up. Mark 1:31 says that. So Jesus meets us where we are and restores us to his purpose. Verses 30 to 34, by evening the whole town gathers. Jesus heals many. He drives out demons. Yet he silences the demons because they know who he is. Jesus controls revelation and power, right? And Jesus is not impressed by noise. He works through truth and authority. Verses 35 to 39, before dawn, Jesus goes to a solitary place to pray. The disciples search for him. Jesus explains he must preach in other towns, and that is why he came. Jesus depends on the Father. He went to a solitary place where he prayed. Mark chapter 1:35. Even divine power flows through prayerful dependence or seeking God's faith, in the quiet time. Verses 40 to 42. For a man with leprosy approaches Jesus. He kneels. He believes Jesus can heal him. Jesus does something. He touches him. The man immediately is healed. So Jesus is willing and compassionate, because till that time nobody would touch people with leprosy. It was against the law, right? So he says, I'm willing, he said in Mark chapter 1, verse 41. So Jesus is not afraid of brokenness, right? Verses 43 to 45, Jesus tells the healed man to remain quiet. Instead, the man spreads the news. Jesus becomes unable to enter towns openly, and he stays in lonely places. Jesus bears the cost of others' actions, right? And obedience matters even when joy overflows. So the pattern is authority, compassion, prayer, mission, and sacrifice. He commands evil, he heals the broken, he depends on the Father, and he prioritizes the mission. So he bears the cost. So the key takeaways is Jesus has authority over evil. Jesus is deeply compassionate. Prayer fuels ministry. Obedience protects God's work, and Jesus' willingness bears our burdens. These verses remind us Jesus is not distant or harsh. He's powerful and compassionate, right? He speaks with authority, heals the broken, touches the untouchable, calls the obedient to faith, and so he wants us to follow him with trust, humility, and obedience. So I hope this encouraged you today morning. Have a wonderful Tuesday. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.